Okay, I would like to call to order the City of Guardian Prairie Planning and Zoning Commission work session. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Connor Spray from Liberty High School is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Connor. Debbie, you want to do the roll?
Chairman Woolbridge.
Who?
Chairman Woolbridge.
Yeah. Sorry.
Commissioner Lamb. Here. Commissioner Molenkamp.
Here.
Commissioner Musler.
Present.
Commissioner Neske.
Here.
Commissioner Pollard. Absent. Commissioner Northcutt. Absent. Commissioner Stankovich. Absent. Alderman Detweiler. Absent.
She's here, but I think she's upstairs.
Yes.
Okay, the first order of discussion in the work session will be the Blue Onyx Development LLC rezoning of 6.89 acres from R1A to R1D with a PUD. Kathy, do you have any comments at this point?
No, the staff report was prepared by Melinda Lim at Interwest and provided in your packet. There was one little typo where it said sanitary instead of storm. I think it's on page 6. For utility and drainage, the sanitary sewers will drain by gravity and be routed to the detention basin. I don't think we want that. So just a clarification on that.
I've got one question for you, Cam. As I recall, if I can find it here, the conditions in the staff report are, a lot of it has to do with, I believe, landscaping. Is that something that was supposed to have been submitted at this time?
It not necessarily. It can come at a later time. Staff typically reviews that. The board wants to be, the commission wants to be sure that it's consistent with our landscaping policies, but in code. But it's not always submitted at this time. Would be with the final area plan.
And this was done by that group out of Florida that reviewed this.
Correct.
Do they also look at the architectural renderings that were given and provide any feedback on those at all?
They're primarily looking at any code requirements, and I don't believe we have any architectural code requirements. I think sometimes she may provide an opinion or a comment for consideration by planning and zoning.
All right, any commission members have any questions for Kathy?
Kathy, on page 4, where there's a listing of the R1D zoning standards and what's proposed, does it comply, does it not comply, and so there's an entry for sidewalks up the middle of that table. It says that proposed is both sides and a minimum of 5 foot wide. plans seem to indicate 4-foot wide sidewalk. And you've even built 4-foot wide sidewalks anymore? I mean, that doesn't comply with ADA standards. Okay. Well, we'll ask Mr. Faulkner that question when he gets up here. Also, Matt, I was gonna ask you. It's unusual for us to see a dead end street. So it is a private street.
Mhm.
But do we know if the fire district, the O'Fallon Fire District has approved it, or do you think they will approve it?
I don't know if they've approved it, but I did some research and from the end of the cul-de-sac
Yeah.
to the end of the road, I think it is a sufficient distance where a truck could go down and then safely back up.
And then-
So I think it will be approved by the fire department, but I'm unsure if it's been approved at this time.
Thank you.
Anybody? Yes, Angela.
I just wanted to know the distance between each of the said properties. I didn't, unless it's listed, I just didn't see how far apart are these homes from each other.
They're looking at 6-foot side yards. Which I think brings up an interesting question. Have we approved 6-foot side yards?
I wouldn't have the history on that, to be honest. I'm sorry.
I thought that most of the time, if we were going to reduce it, it was to 7 or 8.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
Are these proposed to have basements?
Yes.
Also to where are there any proposal for tornadoes, or what would we do? What would this establishment do for tornadoes if they're for the community itself? Is there a
Well, they're going to have basements.
would be deep enough?
Right.
Doesn't seem like it would be deep enough. I guess that's what is it sufficient for a tornado? Okay.
They're regular basements.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think they're not like crawl spaces or shelter spaces.
Okay, they're just regular standard basements that any home would have. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Pam, Mike? Okay, the next item on the agenda is Missouri siding rezoning, 2355 Post Road from R1B to C1 with a conditional use permit. This is a piece of property just down the road down here, fronts Post Road, and it's approximately 0.93 acres. And with that comment, I will ask Kathy for some comments.
Absolutely. And I do have a written staff report I can share with the commission. The request is for rezoning from R1B single family residential to C1 local commercial for a siding company office operation. Matt measured the property as approximately 0.94 acres and contains an existing residence, a detached garage, and several small shed-like structures. Or very technical term there I'm throwing out. If you pass by the site, you probably know what I'm talking about. The applicant proposes using the main house as office space, the detached garage for business and operations and storage. And they have approximately 4 on-site parking spaces. Applicant stated that there will not be regular customer traffic on site. However, owner and employees will be present during business hours. And a nephew of the owner currently resides in the home. However, this does not meet any home-based business requirements because it is the nephew. and not the owners themselves that live in the home. Um, Excuse me. Staff was informed that the business has been operating since approximately February without appropriate zoning approval or business license. Despite that operation, the city has received no complaints from adjacent property owners, and no objections or comments were received by staff from the 22 notified properties that are within 300 feet. This proposed use is generally consistent with permitted business office uses that are allowed in the C1 district. But the main zoning issue is that the C1 requires a minimum lot size of 1 acre, and this is not quite there. It's only 0.94 acres, and the applicant would need an approved variance before final Board of Aldermen action on a rezoning. Staff also identified incomplete application materials. No scaled location map was submitted, and a boundary survey was submitted in place of a legal description. These are documents that could be provided to the board unless before final consideration, unless the Planning and Zoning Commission felt they needed them for their review. The property is surrounded entirely by residential zoning, so the commission may wish to consider compatibility with surrounding neighborhood and a potential precedent for future commercial encroachment. And then any parking and traffic impacts. Again, they're not having customers come to the site, so it's really just the business owners and the operations of the office. Staff's recommendation is that any recommendation from planning and zoning be subject to commission conditions, including approval of the variance by the Board of Adjustment, submission of the missing application materials, that it be restricted to office use only, that there be no retail or customer traffic, that no outdoor storage would be allowed, and any future expansion or modifications would require additional city review. And of course, they need to obtain a proper business license before commencing operations again. So the next steps would be the recommendation from planning and zoning, then the Board of Adjustment variance a process, and then if that's approved, Board of Aldermen consideration.
Got a couple comments here. First one's a question. The agenda is stating this is a CUP. What's the conditional use?
They submitted initially for a conditional use, and then in conversations with them, it was determined it was not necessary. They aren't planning any outside storage that would require the CUP, so they've withdrawn that.
So it's strictly a permitted use in C1 as a business office.
Correct.
You know, as it relates to storage, I've driven by that property several times. And in the very rear of the property, there's a pretty dilapidated structure. And it looks like they are storing scaffolding out in the open behind that building. And I don't know that that garage is actually usable from the looks of it. I mean, it looks pretty beat up. But the garage itself is an accessory structure. Are accessory structures like that allowed in a C1 zoning? I mean, I've tried to find that because it's I guess a legal non-conforming at this point as a residence. But can they have a structure like that close to the road and meet the setback requirements?
Do you know, John, whether C1, you probably would know that, just like I'm trying to.
Well, John's looking at that to speed this up, but I'll make an observation. I looked at the zoning map the other day and counted what I think are between 10 and 12 properties in the city that are zoned for that B district. At least that's what the color seems to indicate. And that's in the whole city. And those are generally would be a minimum of 20,000 or 20,000 acres, 20,000 square feet. If we take something out of the B district like this, and we're kind of diluting any opportunities in the future for any housing on, I'll call them larger properties. I don't know that 20,000 square feet represents a large property, but for here, and you start looking at the map, got a lot of R1D and the PUDs and so forth. I think it's worth something to consider here. And as Kathy said, it's surrounded really on all four sides by residential. So I'm just throwing that out. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Young, who is diligently looking at the code.
Yeah. As I understand the question, and maybe I ask just to make sure I'm understanding the question. Could you restate what the question is? Because I think I found the answer, but I want to make sure.
Well, if this were to be approved, would that garage in front of the house, which is not connected, so that's why you have a legal non-conforming, would that be allowed in a C1 district? Because what I'm leading up to is that if this were to be approved, would he be required, if it's not allowable, be required to tear it down? Since we're rezoning, and shouldn't it all be in conformance?
And I don't know the answer. Is there any intention to build anything additional on the property to?
Not at this time.
Kathy, did I hear you correctly that neighbors were contacted and they don't have any issues with it? With the construction right now?
The adjacent property owners, 22 property owner, Matt determined what the 300 feet around the required notification. All 22 property owners were sent notification and staff has not had any communications.
Okay.
I would say the city code does provide that while tenancy and ownership may change on property, it doesn't specify in terms of a zoning code change. A zoning code change would not negate a non-conforming use in and of itself. But the code does provide that if there's a change in the nature, character, extent, or intensity of a non-conforming use, building, or structure, that may negate it. Now, whether this qualifies for that, I without studying it further, I couldn't answer that question.
But if they are planning on operating this as a business office, would storage of equipment inside that structure be allowed?
Inside the home that they're using, inside the garage structure?
So long as
This is a siding, like I said, they've already got scaffolding, what I think is scaffolding at the back, behind that storage unit back there. But if they're going to use the garage for storage, is that allowable under the zoning?
I don't know that we have anything that says it's not allowed.
Because that's more than being a business office,
So
which is the
accessory
permitting.
use to the garage.
yeah, I think well, I'd have to look into it further, but there's certainly an argument to be made that it would be an accessory use. And if the building is there, as long as the building meets all the code requirements from a building code perspective, it could be used for that purpose. If it's a continuing nonconformity, the same answer would apply. Again, with those issues not necessarily being fully resolved.
So any condition should maybe include that that building meets the code requirements?
I'm fine with those conditions, sure.
Anybody have any other comments or questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So when and by what means was the notification provided to the adjacent party? Because I see your request, Kathy, on the 23rd, but then I see a follow-up on May 4th.
So the property was posted immediately upon application. Debbie might know the exact date, but the property was posted early on.
Certified letters sent to people.
The letters were sent out initially only to the adjacent property owners. And then I had Matt run the 22 properties, and the owner confirmed that he sent notification to all 22 property owners. And I'm sure he can speak to that during the public hearing more specifically.
Chairman, what is the property or that garage that you're speaking of? What's in it today?
I have no idea.
Okay. And they're not planning, according to this, they're not planning on having any materials in there, right? No trucks, deliveries, or no materials being
I
held
think
in the
according to
property?
Kathy, they're planning on storing material or equipment.
But the rezoning request says the proposed use is office only and no materials are to be held on the property. So does that,
I understood that to mean outside, and that's where the need for the conditional use was determined to be not necessary.
So in fact, the CUP is going to be necessary based upon what you just said.
No, they're not storing any materials outside. You know, if there's scaffolding sitting outside, then they need to remove that from the site.
Yeah. But then is that a mini warehouse under the conditional use?
I think we need to ask the applicant what his intentions are specifically with regard to storage. Right, right. I didn't get the sense that it was going to be a mini warehouse. I think it's just, you know, it's not large enough for a whole lot of storage.
Okay. Anybody got anything else for the cause? Yes, Mr. Muslim.
Well, I'll make a comment that the proposed rezoning doesn't appear to be in conformance with the comprehensive plan. Just make that comment.
All right, anything else? All right, the last thing for the work session agenda will be the multifamily moratorium, and included in your packet was a draft red line version of the changes that we discussed over the previous two meetings, and all the comments and changes and everything have been incorporated into this document. And just to kind of refresh everybody's memory a little bit, the highlights, this isn't all of them, but the highlights are that it restricts multifamily dwellings to properties that abut or adjacent to I-64. Minimum lot areas for a multifamily building is 5 acres. Heights is 2 stories or less. Minimum lot width is 100 feet. You can't have more than 6 connected units, nor more than 8 dwelling units per acre. There was also minimum front and rear setbacks that were changed, and also fencing requirements to adjacent properties. And in fact, the adjacency to I-64 was mentioned twice in this document that you have here, both at the beginning and also on page 5. It was number 8, paragraph 8, I should say. Does anybody have anything that they want to add to that cause? Okay, well then I think we're done with the agenda. Before we adjourn the multifamily, there's 2 things that I'd like to bring up just very quickly, more administrative than anything. One is this will be Kathy's last zoning meeting with us as she moves into retirement in 8 days. Not that anybody is counting, but she's kept me apprised of how many days. We've really enjoyed working with you, and you've brought a lot to the table, and we really appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it as well. You guys are a great commission to work with.
You will until next Saturday. The other thing, and I'll kind of let Carla talk about this, but the Board of Aldermen will have I guess, a final reading at their meeting on Wednesday,
Yes.
where they are going to amend the code of ordinances that will provide the zoning board members a stipend of $50 per commission meeting attended. And this was through the work of Carla and Alderman Nay back there and the mayor. I wasn't going to leave you out. But I'll let Carla kind of talk about it and the reasoning behind it.
Well, it's like I've said before. I say it to the board and I have said it to all of you. I think this commission is very important, and the work that you do is very important because in most ways, then it helps the Board of Aldermen when they get the ordinances or the developers things to look at, because you've done the hard work of looking at the water flow, looking at, does it comply with this or does it comply with that? And that's where I've said many times that I think the expertise that we have on this commission is very good and very important, because to be honest with you, there's more expertise on this commission for that type thing than there is on the board. The board, we learn as we go, and I'll admit it, we aren't, I'm not an engineer. We have a retired engineer here, and we have other professionals that deal with contracts, and they deal with other items that come up in these things. And it is important to have people to be able to look at those things so that when it gets to the board, amongst all the other things that we have to look at, we don't have to get as much down in the nitty-gritty with that kind of stuff, because we know whatever should come from here has those exceptions or has those conditions written in them. And I just felt like that expertise needed to have a stipend. It's important that you be here for the meetings. It's important that you do the work prior to the meetings. And you should get something for that time and all of that work. It's important to the city. So I put forth an RBA to the board and asked them to consider a stipend. So.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Need a motion to adjourn the work session?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Musler and seconded by Neske. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we'll be adjourned until 7 o'clock.